recording? All right, here we go. All right, so what we're going to do, now, again, do your best. That's all you can do. I move a little bit fast because actually to get a nice flowing line, you sometimes have to move it kind of fast. All right, I'll try to get white under there. All right, so what we're gonna do is, this is the high hip of the figure. Remember we talked about that last week? See, here's the torso angle. This is the high hip. So we're gonna skim the high hip, and then we're gonna let the fabric just flow away from that hip. So see how those lines are just sweeping and loose. And don't even worry about the length of the line. We can always come back and shorten it. Okay, now off the low hip or relaxed hip, you just kind of, again, skim the hip. Now I've showed a little bit of compression there at where her leg is coming forward, and then just swing. But you can see the fabric doesn't flow quite as far away from the figure as it does on the high hip where there's going to be the most movement. So this one comes a little farther from the hip. This one swings out loosely but a little closer. How we doing? Okay, now I'm going to sort of follow. So this leg is coming forward. So this is going to be the largest column of fullness, and it's going to emphasize the leg that's coming forward. So see how it's just a loose flowing line. Once again, don't worry about the length of the line, just get a loose flowing line there. So that's the fabric being pushed forward by the movement of the leg as she walks. Okay, now along that same leg, I'm going to pull another column of fullness down there. Before I go on, I'm going to show you something just off to the side here. Okay, can everybody see where I'm drawing right here? Okay, so if this was a croquis that was for a flat tack drawing, or there was no movement to the figure, here's the concept of a flared skirt. Okay, now a flared skirt is basically cut. Now you're too high. Okay, sorry. Basically cut on the bias. All right.
Shoulders is where we can see, right at her shoulder.
Yeah, that's as far up as you can.
Okay, got it.
Her ankle is as low as
Okay, so anyways, a flared skirt can be a circular, usually is a circular shape pattern. And then, of course, it depends on how flared it is, whether it's a full circle or just slightly flared. All right, but part of that skirt will be on the bias, which you guys might not know what that is. Okay, okay. So anyways, here's the concept of, because it's on the bias, it has more of a flowing movement than a skirt that's cut on the straighter grain, like a pencil skirt like we were drawing last week. So here's the concept. So here I'm just drawing a little straight flared skirt. Okay, now here's the idea. You can see this is just a regular, she's standing forward. If I have a high hip, the largest column of fullness will come off the high hip. The medium column of fullness will come off the small hip, and then you might have a column of fullness in the center. Here's the idea. You put the hem on the columns of fullness, and then with a downward curve, and then the fabric that falls in between has a slight upward curve. That's how you get the movement. Now this skirt can get wider and wider by doing that. But anyways, so that's the concept. So that's sort of what we're doing here, but there's motion to this. All right, so moving on. So we've got that largest column of fullness being pushed by that leg coming forward. Now we're going to draw the medium column of fullness coming off the low hip. And then we don't really have a full column of fullness in the center. We're just going to show the flow of the fabric. So that's this line here is just kind of down the center. So here we have our large column of fullness. Here's the medium. This just kind of shows the movement of the fabric. All right, and then we're going to add a couple more smaller columns of fullness over there. All right, I'm going to try to darken my lines up by using the black pencil so that you can hopefully see a little bit better, because I do have a lot of lines. All right, so, okay, everybody look up for a second, and this is in review. So starting with that column of fullness coming, it's blue, coming off the high hip, and then off the low hip, largest column of fullness coming over that leg that's pushing forward, medium column of fullness showing the drape of the fabric, and then maybe another column of fullness. Okay, here's what my hem is going to do. There's my hip angle, everybody, right? Remember, the hip angle is perpendicular to the center front torso, so there's our hip angle. All right, so I'm actually going to start, we could just have this go down, but we can also have it kind of move with that leg, so I am going to do that. It's kind of moving over that leg that's coming forward. Here's the fabric between the columns of fullness, and it has a slight upward curve and then downward curve on this column of fullness over here to the right, because again, we want to follow this hem angle. All right, then over here, so it's not a real order. I mean, there's not a real order. I'm going through columns of fullness. Over here, slightly up, down, and then there's the final curve. And because you can see I kind of added, so because you can make it even have more movement and more width. So, how do we do? Shall we do it again? Okay. Do you need a minute?